Hi, my name is Amy Magdalene Matthews. Imagine a world where the law is applied with absolute rigidity, where there is no flexibility, no consideration of fairness, and no room for conscience. Would justice truly be served in such a world? This is where equity steps in. Equity developed as a system to soften the harsh edges of common law, guided by timeless principles known as the maxims of equity, which continue to influence court today, including in Malaysia. I will explain three maxims which are: equity follow the law, he who comes to equity must come with clean hands, and equity will not perfect an imperfect gift, together with the meaning, historical background, and the relevant case law. Let's begin with one of the oldest and most fundamental principle: equity follow the law. Historically, when the equity emerged in the Court of Chancery, it did not aim to overthrow the common law, instead it worked alongside it. It signified respect for the certainty. Equity was never meant to replace the law but to complement it. Equity ensures fairness and justice, but it cannot override or contradict clear statutory or legal provisions. Instead, it fills the gaps where the law is silent or too rigid. In practice, equity recognizes legal estate, rights, title, and interests. However, equity can restrain a legal owner from making an unconscientious use of the legal rights. In the Malaysian case of Syarikat Faizal Sdn Bhd against Viceroy Sdn Bhd, involved a dispute between a mother, who was a managing director of the Plaintiff Rice Company, and her son, managing director of the defendant rice company. The defendant were accused of copyright and trademark infringements. The defendant wanted to rely on equitable estoppel as a defense to a trademark infringement actions. The court cited the case of Wong Kim Fat against Leong and Company. Based on the Section 40 sub 1 sub A to F and Section 2 of the Trademark Act, the defendant could not rely on equitable estoppel. This is because the law already set out specific rules for trademark infringements. The defendant could not rely on equity to escape liability. Next, in Darul Fikirs against Dewan Bahasa and Pustaka, the plaintiff sought an injunctions against Dewan Bahasa and Pustaka for breach of contract. But under the Dewan Bahasa and Pustaka Act 1959, only the Board of Control could be sued, not the Dewan Bahasa and Pustaka itself. Granting the injunctions would contradict the statutes, so the court refused. This case has shown that the maxim that equity respects legislative intentions, it cannot step in where doing so would conflict with a statute. Despite the limits, equity still plays an important role. Although it follows the law, it also ensures that legal rights are not used as instruments of operations. These cases illustrate the limits of equity, as they cannot override contradictory statutory provisions, but it can prevent abuse of legal rights and prevent fraud or unconscionable conduct. Ultimately, this maxim ensure a healthy balance. The law remains predictable but still flexible enough to achieve justice in the difficult cases. It prevents equity from becoming too powerful or disruptive, while still allowing it to serve as a safeguard against rigid or unjust applications of the law. At the same time, it strengthens the rule of law, showing that fairness must operate within the legal boundaries and not outside them. The second maxim is that he who comes to equity must come with clean hand. This maxim focuses on moral integrity, which means that anyone seeking an equitable remedy must act fairly and honestly. If their conduct is stained by fraud, illegality, or deceptions, equity will refuse to assist them. One of the leading cases illustrating this is the case of Cross and Cross, in which Wood Judge emphasized that a claimant conduct that will make a specific performance inequitable was a complete bar. The court stressed that the bad conduct must relate to the subject matter of the claim, preventing this maxim from being applied too broadly. Another strong illustration is found in the Privy Council decisions of Chetia and Chetia, which is about a father who transferred 40 acres of the land to his son as a nominee to evade tax. To support the scheme, a false receipt was created to hide the fraud. Years later, when the father wanted to sell the land, the son refused to give him power of attorney. The father then sued for a declaration that the land was held on trust for him. However, the Privy Council dismissed the claim because the father's hand was unclean, as the transfer was motivated by tax evasions. Therefore, he could not rely on equity to enforce his right. In another case, Tinsley against Milligans also demonstrate the clean hand doctrines. Two women bought a house but solely registered in Miss Tinsley's name so Miss Milligans could commit a benefit fraud. But after their relationship ended, Miss Tinsley tried to evict Miss Milligans. The House of Lords allowed Miss Milligans to succeed, not because her conduct was clean, but because she did not need to rely on the illegality to prove her claim, as her contributions to the purchase price was enough. Lord Gough dissented, arguing that any involvement in illegality should bar relief. This maxim protects the integrity of equity by ensuring it is not exploited by wrongdoing. It prevents people from using equity to profit from wrongdoing. Equity also ensures that integrity and clean administrations of equitable jurisdictions. At the same time, it reinforced the idea that equitable remedies are not automatic, but they depend on the conscience and fairness. In the recent Malaysian case of Mers Shahinuddin and Ranjit against Ravi Chantiran, the plaintiff sought equitable remedies against a law firm by trying to hold the lawyers liable for his losses. But court refused because the plaintiff had been dishonest, withheld key facts, and contributes to the wrongful situations. Applying the maxim, he who comes to equity must come with clean hand. The court ruled that a claimant engaging in improper conduct cannot rely on equity for remedy. His lack of clean hand barred him from obtaining the equitable remedies that he sought. This equity is not just about the technical legal arguments, but it is about the conscience and fairness. It ensures that those who seek justice must first act justly themselves. It upholds a moral integrity within the law and ensures equitable remedy grounded in ethical conduct. Finally, the maxim of equity will not perfect an imperfect gift. This maxim means that equity does not assist a volunteer where someone has provided no considerations. Without giving considerations, an undertaking to make a gift is not enforceable. It is only a gratuitous promise. In order to make a gift perfect, a donor must complete the transfer of the property and do everything necessary within their power to effect the transfer. If a donor fails to complete the legal transfer of the property, equity will not step in to make the gift valid. In the landmark case of Milroy and Lloyd, Turner Law Judge established two principles: equity will not assist a volunteer, and equity will not perfect an imperfect gift. This reinforced the need of proper legal formality. Even though equity is strict, it does allow some exceptions. Firstly, the every effort rule in Re-Ross has softened the strict rules, where the donor did all within their power to complete the transfer. Therefore, equity upheld the gift. Another exception arises in the case of Strong and Bird, where the donor intentions to transfer personal property to another person is sustained as that intentions until death. Failing to make the transfer while alive, then if on the donor death, the property was vested and the transfer is complete. A further exception is proprietary estoppel, which is a principle of equity that regulate the conduct of party in a dispute, where it arises when a person give a promise or assurance to another person that there will or will be given an interest in the property, and that person reasonably relies on the promise or assurance to their detriments. In the case of Jumari against Muhammad Kasumans, it was established that the gift was failed because the memorandum of transfer was not registered, and therefore the claimant was merely a volunteer and equity could not intervene. There is also the exceptions of donatio mortis causa, which is a gift made in contemplations of imminent death. This acts as a hybrid between a lifetime gift and a testamentary dispositions, allowing equity to recognize a gift even when a formality was incomplete, provided that the donor intended the gift to take effect only upon death and there was the delivery of the subject matter. This equity protects the certainty of property ownerships and ensure fairness between the party by preventing courts from helping someone who gave no considerations. In a modern application shown in the case of Tan Keng Yong against Tan Hua Lim, the donor intended to transfer property to family members but failed to complete the legal steps and registrations. The court rules that because the transfer was incomplete, equity cannot intervene to save it. As a result, the gift was considered void, upholding the principle established in Miroy and Lord. In conclusions, equity is truly conscience of the law. It emerged to ensure that justice is not merely legal, but it also moral and practical. It softens rigidity, prevent abuse and ensure fairness, but it does so within the boundary when it follows the law, demands clean hands, and it refuses to perfect imperfect gift. In today's society, this maxim reminds us that the law must be certain, but the justice must also be fair. Thank you.
Losing my mind, speaking my truth.